Asian leaders from 10 countries have completely rejected a controversial proposal from President Trump, causing diplomatic chaos. What did these powerful nations say that has reportedly shocked the White House and changed international relations overnight? Number 10. Vietnam. In 2025, Vietnam purportedly made headlines by boldly rejecting an offer from Donald Trump that promised nearly $500 million in military aid. However, there was a significant condition. Vietnam would have to sever ties with China and transfer control of its strategic ports to American forces. To many observers, this proposition seemed less like aid and more like leverage. The deal appeared designed to turn Vietnam into a U.S. stronghold within Asia's escalating power contest. Vietnamese leaders, however, did not hesitate. They responded with a clear message: their sovereignty was not subject to negotiation. This act of defiance was not without consequences. Almost immediately, the United States canceled visa-free travel for Vietnamese officials, a measure widely interpreted as a diplomatic rebuke. Instead of retreating, Vietnam seized the opportunity to strengthen its partnership with China. President Xi Jinping's visit shortly thereafter solidified over 40 new cooperation agreements, spanning sectors from infrastructure to energy. This was a calculated maneuver, signaling that Vietnam was unafraid to pivot eastward. Number 9. Malaysia. Malaysia reportedly made its decision swiftly and without hesitation. In early 2025, Trump's team presented an offer laden with billions in trade incentives and infrastructure investment. Yet, beneath the overtures and promises lay a major stipulation. Malaysia was required to cease all security ties with China and align itself with Washington's new Indo-Pacific strategy. For Malaysian leaders, this demand represented an unacceptable boundary violation. They argued that sovereignty could never be exchanged for economic opportunity, regardless of how lucrative it appeared. The response was unambiguous. Malaysia walked away from the deal. In doing so, it sent a shockwave throughout Southeast Asia. Rather than yielding to American pressure, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim moved to deepen ties with Beijing, securing substantial investments in green energy and digital infrastructure. Chinese diplomats lauded Malaysia's independent spirit as the two nations proceeded to sign over a dozen new bilateral agreements. The message was unmistakable. Malaysia prioritized self-determination over superpower favoritism and expressed pride in this choice. Number 8. India. India did not delay in pushing back against the proposal. When Donald Trump's administration offered a comprehensive military and trade package in early 2025, the initial reports seemed promising. Billions in arms deals, enhanced defense cooperation, and preferential trade terms were included. However, the offer came with a significant condition: India had to distance itself from Russia. For India, a nation with long-standing ties to Moscow and a staunch advocate for strategic autonomy, this condition was deemed impossible to accept. The answer was delivered swiftly and firmly: absolutely not. Instead of yielding under pressure, India utilized the moment to underscore its independence on the global stage. Indian leaders emphasized that they do not accept directives from external powers and that alliances must be founded on mutual respect, not coercion. Prime Minister Modi made a bold move by announcing new joint projects with Russia and reaffirming India's prominent role within BRICS. While Washington expressed evident frustration, India remained steadfast. Number 7. Philippines. The Philippines found itself at the center of high-stakes diplomacy when Trump's offer arrived in Manila in mid-2025. On the surface, the proposal appeared generous, including expanded military aid, advanced weaponry, and infrastructure funding. However, the fine print contained an insurmountable demand: exclusive U.S. military base rights across Luzon and Mindanao. This would effectively transform the Philippines into a staging ground for America's power projection in Asia. For President Marcos Jr., this proposition went too far. The country had fiercely defended its independence and was unwilling to relinquish it. Public reaction was intense. Filipinos protested in the streets, holding signs with messages like, "No to neo-colonialism," and "Our land, our rules." The government remained firm, rejecting the proposal in a televised statement that gained widespread attention across Asia. American diplomats were reportedly stunned, having anticipated reliance on the long-standing alliance, only to encounter a nation resolute in reclaiming its full sovereignty. Number 6. South Korea. South Korea did not merely refuse the offer, it did so with calculated precision. When Trump's administration presented a proposal in 2025 to exempt Seoul from extensive new tariffs, it initially seemed like a potential lifeline for its export-reliant economy. However, a critical condition was embedded within the deal. South Korea was required to halt all advanced technology exports to China and curtail joint ventures in artificial intelligence and semiconductors. For a nation whose economic foundation rests on innovation and trade, this was perceived as more than just unfavorable, it was considered a direct threat to its future prosperity. South Korean leaders responded decisively, they said no. The repercussions were swift. Washington retaliated by reinstating tariffs on steel and automobiles, presumably hoping to compel Seoul into compliance. Yet, instead of capitulating, South Korea focused inward. It accelerated investments in domestic technology, sought new markets in Europe and the Middle East, and initiated discreet discussions with ASEAN partners regarding a regional innovation pact. South Korean citizens largely supported the decision, expressing pride that their country resisted pressure, even from its oldest military ally. Number 5. Japan. Japan surprised many observers when it firmly declined Trump's 2025 proposal. The offer included substantial trade benefits and military enhancements, but only on the condition that Japan join a US-led coalition aimed at economically isolating China. For Tokyo, this presented a diplomatic dilemma disguised as an opportunity. While the US characterized it as a defense of democracy and security, Japanese officials viewed it as an ultimatum that jeopardized their long-term stability. Prime Minister Ishiba acted promptly. He rejected the deal and advocated for a more balanced regional strategy. The United States reportedly did not react favorably. Tariffs were reimposed almost immediately, significantly impacting Japan's automotive industry. However, instead of succumbing to pressure, Japan leveraged its strengths. It expanded trade relationships with the European Union, deepened innovation partnerships with South Korea and Singapore, and strengthened its involvement in global peacekeeping initiatives. Number 4. Taiwan. Taiwan's rejection, though perhaps less vociferous, had a significant impact. In early 2025, Trump's team approached Taipei with a substantial offer: cutting-edge American weapon systems, advanced cyber defense capabilities, and expanded diplomatic support. The condition attached was critical. Taiwan would need to permit full U.S. oversight of its defense operations and consent to policy adjustments that directly aligned its security strategy with Washington's interests. For a democracy perpetually navigating existential threats, this offer felt more like control than protection. Taiwan politely but firmly declined. Leaders in Taipei clarified that while external support was welcome, they would never exchange autonomy for military hardware. The island nation had invested considerable effort in forging its democratic identity and was unwilling to permit a foreign power to direct its course, particularly under conditions that risked embroiling Taiwan further in great power conflicts. Number 3. Cambodia. Cambodia generated considerable attention in 2025 when it dismissed a high-stakes offer from the Trump administration. The United States presented a package featuring infrastructure funding and debt relief. However, the agreement included stipulations that were deemed unacceptable. Trump demanded that Cambodia halt ongoing Chinese-backed development projects and adopt a strictly pro-Western foreign policy. Prime Minister Hun Manet did not hesitate. He characterized the offer as a distraction wrapped in dollars, and unequivocally stated that Cambodia would not be coerced into choosing sides. The U.S. had anticipated compliance but instead encountered defiance. Cambodia not only rejected the proposal but also promptly announced an expansion of its Belt and Road cooperation with Beijing. Chinese media celebrated this decision, portraying Cambodia as a loyal and resolute partner. Meanwhile, American diplomats voiced concerns about diminishing influence in Southeast Asia. Number 2, Singapore. Singapore surprised observers in 2025 by declining a comprehensive offer from the Trump administration. The U.S. proposal promised billions in trade benefits, upgrades in military technology, and preferential investments in key economic sectors. However, it was contingent upon one major condition: Singapore had to abandon its neutrality and formally align against China. For a nation founded on principles of diplomatic balance and strategic independence, this was considered unacceptable. Prime Minister Lawrence Wong articulated the government's stance clearly. Singapore was not inclined to take sides in conflicts initiated by others. The refusal was subtle yet powerful. There was no dramatic public announcement, only a quiet withdrawal from negotiations accompanied by a firm reiteration of Singapore's established foreign policy principles. In response, the U.S. imposed new restrictions on technology exports, seemingly aiming to pressure the island nation into compliance. Number 1, China. China did not merely reject Trump's offer in 2025, it systematically dismantled it. The U.S. proposal was significant, lifting most tariffs, reopening technology cooperation channels, and inviting China into new global trade frameworks. However, the associated cost was deemed prohibitive. Beijing would have been required to relinquish its South China Sea claims, significantly reduce Belt and Road investments, and commit to fundamentally altering internal policies regarding surveillance and data control. For President Xi Jinping, this was reportedly not even a matter for consideration. The response was a swift and unequivocal refusal. China would not be dictated to. This rejection transcended symbolism. China initiated a series of diplomatic actions that reasserted its global influence. It finalized new agreements with nations in Africa and Latin America, accelerated the expansion of BRICS, and hosted a major summit involving Southeast Asian leaders. State media characterized the U.S. proposal as a desperate maneuver by a declining hegemonic power. While Washington hinted at potential economic repercussions, China moved forward, expressing confidence in its economic strength and geopolitical standing. Now, the situation prompts consideration. Do you view these rejections as bold moves toward independence, or as dangerous bets that might backfire? Which country's decision stands out as the most surprising? Your perspectives on these developments are welcome. Furthermore, the narrative hints at a subsequent account detailing how 10 African nations reportedly defied a similar Trump offer even more assertively, suggesting additional shifts in global power dynamics. Consider sharing this account with others interested in evolving international relations.